Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our ACEweb 2020 session. This is our first user webinar of the new year, and our goal for today is to be sure each of you have 2020 vision when it comes to using ACEweb, that you know everything it can do for you, what it can do for your students and for your instructors. There's really nobody better than Jason to give you a thorough overview of ACEweb's capabilities. He's immersed in this program every single day. He does the testing and the documentation for ACEweb, and most of you here today have worked directly with him at one point or another. So whether you're new to ACEweb or have been putting it to work for you for some time, you are sure to leave with an aha moment today. If you have questions or during today's session, go ahead and use the chat box to reach me. I'll be holding all questions until the end of the session today. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jason. Jason, thanks so much.
Thank you, Sharon. And yes, so we do have a lot to cover today. We tried to cram in as many of the big things that we felt that people really needed to be aware of in ACEweb. If you're not using some of these things, we want to try and cover a lot of different topics. So this is definitely going to be a high-level overview of a lot of these. We're not going to go real in-depth into any sort of setup or detailed examples and things. But again, if you do have a question, as Sharon said, just put it in the chat box and we'll try and get that addressed as we have time at the end of the session. So jumping right in, let's look at our agenda. There we go. So we're going to have three main areas that we're going to focus on today. It's going to be staff-centric features, student features, and instructor features. For our first category of staff features, our first section is going to be on data collection. So collecting interest codes and tracking those, supplemental data capture, collecting additional information during the registration process, demographic information capture. We're going to briefly touch base on waivers and releases, as well as email harvesting, so collecting emails to use for mailing list signups and things. Our next section will be on access and accessibility. The big one there being Manager Web or Staff Web Access. It gives your staff the ability to log in to ACEweb as a staff member and perform lots of neat functions that they would normally have to do through Student Manager. We'll also touch base on spam bot mitigation with Google's reCAPTCHA, the WCAG compliance, which is the kind of new standard for web content and accessibility for people with disabilities. And then we'll wrap that section up with two optional modules, which is the calendar course listing and ACEweb alternate interfaces. After that, we're going to focus on the student features, starting with design and convenience. So we'll look at things like responsive web design. Is your website mobile friendly? We'll look at the ACEweb makeover, giving that seamless transition from your main website to your ACEweb site. We're also going to look at student account management. So what options do your students have for accessing and editing things about their profile via ACEweb, as well as being able to print out online certificates and student transcripts via the ACEweb Store module. Finally, we're going to wrap up with the instructor features, which is mainly focused on instructor web access, so giving your instructors the ability to go on ACEweb, log in, and take responsibility of some of those things that maybe you guys are doing as staff members that you could offload to your instructors to kind of share that workload a little bit, such as getting information about their courses, how many students are enrolled, printing out rosters, sending out an email to the class or just to a particular student, as well as entering grades and hours and credits. And if you have the optional attendance tracking module, being able to record that attendance information. And then finally, we're going to talk about some extra resources that you have available to enhance your awareness and knowledge of all things ACEweb, such as the ACEweb Sandbox, where you can go in and just play around, see examples, no sand required. It's a great tool for learning how you can do things with ACEweb or different ways that you can do things. We'll look at the ACEware forums. So if you want to stay on the bleeding cutting edge of new releases for both Student Manager and ACEweb, the forums are the place to go to sign up for that. We'll also look at ACEweb in action. Now, this is examples of you guys. This is your sites that you've allowed us to put links to on our ACEweb in Action section of our website that displays kind of your ACEweb showcase. So it's a great way to see how other people are using the same software that you are in different ways. And then my favorite, the online reference guide. So this is our student manager and ACEweb online help. Pretty much a complete compendium of knowledge that is ACEware is located in this reference guide. So we're going to make sure everyone knows what that is and how you can get to it. And then finally, we'll look at the webinar archive, also on our website. This is where you can view past webinars. In fact, you may be viewing this webinar right now from the webinar archive. And in that case, hello, future webinar watcher, and welcome. So our first section is going to be on data collection. And we're talking about interest code tracking. So what is an interest code? An interest code is a way for you to tie an interest about a course or a group of courses to a student's record. Now, the students can do this themselves when they first create their account on ACEweb. If you've ever gone to the person.awp or the sign up page, you'll see that huge box that has all of your interest areas that you've enabled to be visible on the web as selections for them to choose. So they can go in and add those at the time they create their account, or they can edit them at any time by visiting their profile. Now, you may or may not know that subject codes on courses are actually the same bucket of codes that interest codes use. And so when you have a subject code on a course and a student enrolls in that course, that subject code is stamped as an interest code on their name record. So you can see in my example, can you see my mouse, Sharon?
I sure can.
Awesome. So yeah, you'll see on their main name screen tab what interest codes they have selected. So this could have been ones they've added from their profile, or it could be ones that they obtained by taking a course in that interest area. So what good are interest codes? They're going to tie in perfectly with email marketing. If you want to send out a mass email just about a new computer course that you're going to be offering, a great group of people to send that to would be the ones that have an interest in computers. You can also do really cool things with statistical reporting, so you can see trends on people that have certain interest codes that maybe also share another interest code, and that would allow you to send those linked interests to a broader group of people. Next up, we have supplemental data capture. So this is data that is supplemental to the normal registration process. This is extra information that you want to capture. The cool thing about this is that it is done on a course-by-course basis. So you can capture demographic information and things about the student when they fill out their profile, but that is just tied to the name record, or just tied to the student. Supplemental data capture allows you to be able to use registration type fields that can be linked to that person in a particular course. So you'll be able to use things such as waivers or e-signatures, kind of the I accept these terms checkbox, different types of releases. The other neat thing is that you can use that same data capture template on multiple courses. So you're not having to do a whole bunch of work multiple times. If you've got a big group of courses that all need to ask the same type of question or the same sort of, do you agree to the terms of service, you can use that same data capture template on a multitude of courses just by adding that reference to it on the course page. Supplemental data capture also supports unlimited user-defined fields. So for instance, if you wanted to torture your registrants and make them fill out a Myers-Briggs personality test before they register for a course, you could do that. You virtually have unlimited options for creating fields with unlimited UDFs. The nice thing about supplemental data capture now is that it completely integrates with the current registration process. In the past, it used to take you to a separate page where you'd fill out information and then you'd have to go back, but we ran into trouble with people hitting the back button. Now it's all on the same page, and it's just kind of a nice seamless process that looks and works great. Okay, more on collection. We have your demographic data. So there's multiple ways that you can be collecting this demographic data. Obviously, the big one is going to be on account sign up or via editing the profile. So when they create their account, You can enable however many fields you want to capture more and more demographic information. You can also capture this during the registration process, either with an express registration template or a supplemental data capture page. Customizable fields. So what this means is you might be familiar. Let's see if I can switch over here. So if we go to our preferences in Student Manager and we look at the Names tab, you can see the majority of our demographic information is stored here, and most all of them can be relabeled as something. Now, there are limitations with that. Some of them cannot be relabeled, but the great thing is that on ACEweb, all of those fields are customizable. You can label them whatever you like and tie them to whichever field you want in Student Manager. So that's a really handy ability to be able to customize those fields. The data editable by a student or staff basically means that either you can go in as a staff member through Student Manager or Manager with Access and be able to edit or update a person's demographic data, or the student can go in via ACEweb and manage their profile and edit that data. And you do get the choice between which fields can be edited after it's been created. So a lot of different ways you can customize that. Your demographic data can be used in lots of reports, everything from state to statistical reports. I don't know if we have anyone from Ohio here today, but I know I think it's the PEDS reports, but they are really, really heavy on demographics reports. This is definitely the area for you to get into, start capturing that data. That way you've got it available to use in your reporting. And again, the demographic data does support unlimited user-defined fields. So I did have one example of a customer that needed to really go beyond the ethnicity that you would capture just through a normal dropdown, because they had lots of different combinations. You could be a multitude of different combinations of ethnicities, but having those all listed as a selectable field in a dropdown was kind of cumbersome, and so they wanted to have this available as checkboxes that you could use. And the best way we found to do that was with unlimited UDFs. So a handy option there. So waivers and releases. These are going to be also usable on the account creation page or your sign-up page. Express registration templates, or again, supplemental data capture is probably the most common area that we see these. They can be optional or required. So if you've got a liability waiver, you're doing a course on kids alligator wrangling, and you need them to agree to a liability waiver, you can make that a required field that they have to check on the supplemental data capture page, and they won't be able to enroll in that course without checking the box. So that's kind of an example of like an e-signature. It's basically verifying that they checked that and they agree to the terms. The other options that we've seen people use on the waivers and releases is photo releases, medical releases, terms of services, so on and so forth. All right, wrapping up on our data collection section, we have email collection. So you can choose how much or how little information you want to capture along with an email address when you're doing things like the marketing campaign. We recommend a minimum of, obviously the email address and then a first name and a last name. That way, when you're actually doing your marketing, you can personalize those and send out an email that addresses the actual person that you want to target. When you're doing a marketing campaign link, you can tie that to a catalog code, which in turn gets stamped on the person's name record that gets created as an interest code. So again, just by harvesting that email address or putting up a newsletter sign up, you're going to be able to tie that to extra information that tells you a bit about that person without having to have the full account created with all of those different questions. It can be as minimal as you want. The other nice thing about this is it's kind of a smart system. So let's say they've already created an account on ACEweb and signed up with their email address. It's actually going to check for that when they either do a newsletter sign up or a marketing campaign. If they put in their email address, hit the tab key, and it says, well, you've already got an account here. Is your name Jason Allen? And then you can just continue with that same account. And that kind of helps you to prevent creating duplicate accounts, which nobody likes. Okay, moving on, our next section, access and accessibility. Now, the big one here is going to be manager web or staff web access. So we'll kind of look at a number of these things a little bit closer, but just kind of an overview. Your staff are going to be able to have the ability, no matter where they're at, as long as they've got a browser and an internet connection that can get you to your ACE website, the ability to view and create name records. They can log into a student's record, enroll them in a course. They can look at their registration history. One of the cool things is that they don't need the student's password to do this. The one handy thing that we've seen people use this for is if you ever do any help over the phone with your students, they call in and they're like, my instructor said that I could go on ACEweb and log in and I could go to my history and print something out, but I can't find it. Can you help me? The cool thing is that with staff web access, when you log in as a staff member and then you log in as a student without needing their password, you're going to be seeing what that student sees. So you can follow along with them, say, okay, so you're at the login screen, go ahead and put in your email address and your password. Now you're logged in, click this link here. You can follow along and give them better support because you're essentially seeing the same thing that they're seeing. So as a staff member, you're also going to be able to view course information, view rosters, enter grades, all the same things that instructors can do with instructor access, except quite a bit more. And again, if you have that attendance tracking module, you can also enter the attendance for courses anywhere in the world, as long as you've got an internet connection and access to your ACE website. So let's take a closer look at some of the manager web screens that you'll see. So logging in from the manager web page, you're going to see the staff options. So you can see down here, we've got the option to look up the student, the option to create a student account, look up course or view roster or instructor options, view the staff calendar. Now again, that's an optional module, but if you do have the staff calendar, you can use that through the staff web access. So let's look at the first one here. If we say we want to look up a student, and I do want to point out, once you're logged in to Manager Web as a staff member, if you're using our latest templates, up at the top, you're going to see that you're logged in. It's going to have this kind of portrait framed right here, and it's going to have whatever your student manager login is at the top. And then you'll see, as long as you're not logged on as a student yet, you'll see two options up at the top for log on and sign up. If you do log on, you can log in with just that student's email address without having to go through this name lookup option. So if you know their email address, you can log on the same way that they would log on, with the exception being you don't need that password. If you use the sign up option without being logged in as a student, then it takes you right to the person.awp sign up page where you can create that account but not have to use a password. And so the next time that student would log in, they would use your public password if you have that enabled and be able to finalize their account and create that password. So whichever way you choose, you can either use the name lookup option once you're logged in by clicking that lookup name link, and then either search, partial name matches. You could look up by firms, or you can use custom criteria. There's really a lot of different ways you can filter that down. But once you find them in the list, you simply click that little arrow log on button, and that's going to present you with the options for the student. So, and this will be over on the right-hand side of your page. In fact, I can probably do a quick example of this. So we're going to go look up student, see if our test site is being fast today, or it's not Monday. Come on. Maybe. There we go. Yeah, I had logged out. So this is where you would log in with your student manager staff credentials. Whatever you use to log in as student manager, you'd log in here. I'm using our ACEweb backdoor, so that's what's going to show up on our list. So let's say we find somebody to log in as. Can you guys tell that this is my test environment? Do these names look real to you? We're going to log in as Bill Aspartame. And now you can see over on the right, we have our student options section. So from here, you've got the option to enroll in a course, edit their profile, view their registration history, or log off to be able to select a different student. And if we notice at the top of the page, that changed from log on and sign up to the actual student that's logged in. So now we see both the AW Tech, which is our logged on staff member, and Bill, the first name of the student that we're logged in as. These are also shortcuts. So clicking the AW Tech or the staff logon link takes you right back to the main manager web.awp page where you have your staff options, and if you're logged in, your student options. Clicking on the student link takes you to the X welcome page, and from here you've got all those links to access the different areas that a student would go to see either their profile, history, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's say you've logged on as a student and you have the options presented either to enroll in a course. Quick Pick registration is now a feature that's enabled if you do have that Quick Pick module. You can edit the name record, which takes you to their profile, allows you to edit it. You can view their history, or you can log off. So let's look at enrolling in a course. From this point on, once you click that, it's pretty much like you are just logged in as a normal student. You're going to be picking the course or courses, adding them to the enrollment cart in the same way that the student would. So if it's a course that has supplemental data capture, things like that, it's going to be the same process for you up until you get to the point where you go to pay. You'll notice there's a couple of extra options here. As a staff member, you actually have the option to pay with cash or a check or with an invoice. So this is handy if you are doing like at the door registrations, say you have a conference or something, and you've got a few kiosks set up where your staff members are taking walk-in registrations at the door. Well, people can take cash or pay with a check right there, and you can create that full registration, print them out a receipt or email a receipt, all without having access to Student Manager. You just need that internet connection and access to your ACEweb. It's very, very handy. All right, next up on access and accessibility, we've got spam bot mitigation. So we now support Google's reCAPTCHA v2. I'm sure you've all encountered this on some form that you filled out somewhere on the web where you have to check the box that indicates that you are not a robot. In a nutshell, reCAPTCHA, it's a free service that is going to protect your site from spam bots and abuse. So a robot can't just continuously create new accounts to have some sort of a payload, like put a link to some nefarious site in their comments or something. This uses advanced risk analysis and a lot of things that Google won't even tell you to make sure that it's an actual human that's checking the box. If it gets suspicious or it's not real sure, then it'll issue a challenge and say, select everything that's a fire hydrant or whatever. I'm sure you guys have had to do that now and again, but for the most part, in normal everyday use, all you do is click the box and it's done its job and protected you. We have this available to use on the person.awp or sign up page, your course proposal page, and the teacher application forms. So course proposal is for instructors where they want to submit an idea for a course, which gets created as a catalog code. So again, this is a form on ACEweb that allows someone from the outside to create a record in Student Manager. So we definitely want to have protections on those types of things. The teacher application form is simply the do you want to teach for us option. And what that does is essentially sends an email to your notify office person to indicate that there's an interest in someone teaching for you. Next up, WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So again, we briefly talked about this, and it's just a way for things to be standardized so that your content being served up, no matter what device people are using, has compatibility for people with disabilities to be able to use your site effectively and efficiently. A lot of people are becoming under scope with this now, where their main university or organization is doing a broad scan of all of the sites over all of their servers, and it may find some stuff on your ACE website that is not in compliance. Rest assured that we've done a lot of work and a lot of testing to make sure that if you're using the standard installation or you've done an RWD design, that all of those new templates meet these WCAG requirements. All right, moving on with access. calendar view. So again, this is an optional module, and in a nutshell, it does exactly what it says it does. It's going to give your students a calendar view of the upcoming courses. You'll see they have the ability to filter down by a particular building or instructor, or even search by keywords. So it's kind of more of a graphical user interface for the student to see. Maybe you want to compare to an existing schedule or something. Gives them a different view that they can use for that. Now, along with the calendar view on the student side is the ability to create what's called a My Calendar link. Now, you would put this link on the person's registration history page. So if they go to their My Account and then click View Registration History, they can click this My Calendar link, and it will actually display the calendar, but it will be showing them the sessions for the courses that are upcoming, that they're currently enrolled in. So another handy way for them to be able to view or print out that calendar information specific to them. All of the different calendar views that I'm going to talk about as well are fairly customizable. They all include the hover pop-up. So if you hover your mouse over the link to the course, it's going to give you the description for that course without having to click on it. Not to mention, you can really customize how much information you show there, whether you're going to be showing the meet times, locations. You can enable or disable as much info as you want. So along with calendar module, you'll also get the ACEweb staff calendar view. This one gives quite a bit more information. The biggest thing being it's going to show inactive and unpublished courses. So if you have courses that are coming up, but you have not published those yet, but you want your staff to be able to go in and get a calendar view of those, maybe by a specific location to see, where do we have some gaps in our schedule? Where could we put another one of these class sessions in? This is a great way to get kind of an at-a-glance view with the ability to filter down by a number of different options. Now, kind of in the same vein, again, this is the staff calendar. So when I say staff, I mean you guys, student manager users. There's also an instructor My Calendar link. So if you've enabled instructor access, which we'll talk about a little bit further down the road, if you've enabled instructor access and that particular instructor has the ability to view course information, you can put another one of those My Calendar links on their instructor access page, which will show them the sessions of the courses that they are teaching. So another way to just provide extra access and accessibility for staff, instructors, and your students. All right, and our second optional module that we're going to talk about under access and accessibility is alternate interfaces. So an easy way to explain this would be an alternate interface allows you to create a unique look or brand for your ACEweb website that's going to use the same existing ACEweb installation, but it's going to have its own look and feel. It has its own set of templates. It's got its own I&I settings, and it has its own style. So fonts, colors, logos, all of those things are going to be specific to that interface. So you can do this with either one student manager database and two interfaces. So you have your main ACEweb interface, and then you can add on an alternate interface. And you basically configure that alternate interface to use a specific group of courses. So you're not going to be seeing all the courses from both interfaces. You get to pick and choose which ones show for which interface. We've seen a lot of people do this, and they actually have two separate student manager databases. So maybe you've got, your main organization, and then you have another department that really has a completely different look and feel. Let's say they use a different payment gateway from the main interface. This would be a great way for you to piggyback off of just one ACEweb installation, but have a separate look and feel, separate configuration, and use that same ACEweb installation. It's a great way to maximize efficiency and, of course, save money by not having to buy two ACEwebs. So now we're going to look at some design and convenience options. RWD, or Responsive Web Design, is essentially allowing for compatibility no matter what device a person is using to view your ACEweb or register online. I'm sure you guys are aware that more and more people are using mobile devices, tablets, phones to do their actual browsing and registration. And I'm sure you've all done it yourselves in the past, and you've came across a site that is not a responsive web design, and you end up looking at something kind of like the example on the left there with microscopic text, and you try and push a button and it ends up pushing something completely different. That's not a good way to access your website. So the RWD design is the answer to that. It makes sure that no matter what device they're using, it's always going to be best suited to whatever device that is. And the way it does this is kind of clever use of the HTML templates, style sheets, JavaScript, so that it knows, okay, this is on a tiny screen on a device, so I don't want to have the normal menu that a person with a mouse would use, but I want to have like a touchscreen interface, so a drop-down mobile menu. So it does all that behind the scenes and makes it for a much easier experience for your users. Now, our latest templates with ACEweb, so if you do a fresh ACEweb install, our latest templates are RWD compatible. If you are an existing customer and you haven't done a server move or a new reinstall in a long time, then your website may not be responsive. So definitely get with your tech to find out more information about how you can make that possible. All right, kind of on the design side, we also have the optional ACEweb makeover. And what this does is makes a seamless transition from your main organization or university site to your ACEweb site. So it doesn't look like you are leaving the planet and going to the moon when you click the Register Now button from your main site, and then you end up on something that looks completely different. That can kind of be shell shock for a lot of people, and they're like, wait a minute, is it still the same place? What's going on here? It just looks and feels better and more professional to have your ACEweb site mirror the fonts and colors and logos, all of that good stuff from your main site. Again, this is an optional thing, so get with your tech if you want to talk about getting a quote on doing an ACEweb makeover. There's some things to keep in mind when you go about doing this. You want your main site to be responsive. We can't actually do this if your main site is not responsive because the templates that we're going to use for this are responsive, and so that's just going to break compatibility and not be a good match. You also want your site to be functioning. If you've got existing JavaScript conflicts or problems on your main site, those will carry over when we do the makeover. Because again, we're just copying the styles and the header and the footer from your main site and applying that over the top of ACEweb. So any problems that exist there are going to carry over when we do this. And then finally, one of the most important things is you want to make sure that your main site that we're going to be using as the model for the ACEweb makeover is current, is up to date, and is a finalized design. If you know that your main site is planning a revamp or something in the future, you want to wait until that is done before you initiate the ACEweb makeover, because this is a one-time type of deal. We copy the current design of your main site, but it does not carry over if they were to change some links or completely overhaul the look and feel of your main site. Your ACEweb site, once the makeover is done, would not reflect those new changes. So keep that in mind when thinking about doing the ACEweb makeover. All right, some more convenience options. We've got student account management. So students have a lot of different ways that they can go about updating, managing, and entering their information on ACEweb. They can add and edit their profile and demographic data. Obviously, when they first create their account, person.awp is very customizable in what fields that you choose to be editable, to be visible, and given those options, what am I trying to say here? Yes, so those options are going to be editable by your student and also by your staff member, depending on if you're using Staff Web Access or Student Manager. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The other thing they have access to on person.awp is the family groups. I'm not sure if any of you have used family groups yet, but this is a way for them to add and link family members to their own account. So this is super for places that use proxy registration, kids camps, things like that. If you want to make that a more easy, seamless process, having the ability for them to create these family groups through their profile makes it much, much of a more fluid process when they're going through and actually registering. So instead of having to enter all that information multiple times, they just simply check the box next to the family member they want to add to the cart for this course or enroll in that course. Very, very handy. The other options for account management is viewing class history. So again, from that My Account page, you have the history option, and there are a number of different options that they can do, such as viewing current and completed and upcoming courses. They can pay their invoices or balances due online. Not a lot of people know about this, but this is not terribly new, but fairly new. If you have a student, let's say they call and they say, hey, I registered for this class, but I forgot to check the option for the book fee, and I actually do need that fee. I tried to go back in, but it said I was already registered in the class, yada, yada, whatever. You can simply go into that registration in Student Manager, check that optional book fee, and then say, okay, go ahead and go online, go to your profile, and you're going to see a button that says Pay Balances Online. They click that button, and it simply takes them through the payment process to pay the remaining balance for that registration. Really handy. On the subject of registration history, we have the AW Storm module. So STORM stands for Student Online Reporting Module. And what it does is allow your students to log into ACEweb and view or print a PDF of their transcript or certificates directly from ACEweb. Now you get to choose which ones are enabled for this feature, both for the transcript side as well as the certificate side. If we take a closer look, they first log in and go to their My Account page, and then they click the history link. From that page, there's going to be two buttons. If you enable this feature, they'll see two new buttons there, My Certificates and My Transcript. If they click My Transcript, it's going to open in a new tab the student's transcript report. The real cool thing about this is that this is a report that is made and designed in Student Manager by you. So you have full customization over how you want the template or the layout of this report to look. The courses that show up on it are also customizable in the way that you get to choose which ones show on a transcript. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want online courses or memberships or things like that showing on a person's transcript. So you basically just don't enable those classes to show when they go to print out their transcript. For the certificate side, they click the history button and then they say certificates, and then it's presented with a list of the certificates for the classes that you have enabled. So again, you get to specify if a course can even show certificates, as well as if that particular student met some sort of a requirement. So maybe, some of the kids in the class got a passing grade, so their certificate is enabled, but not for others. You get to choose on a registration by registration basis which of these certificates are available for the student to go and print out. So they click that button, and again, this is a report that is done in Student Manager, so you can customize that to your heart's content within reason. I will say that we've added more and more functions to be available on the ACEweb online reporting, but right out of the box, it is not 100% fully compatible. So if you have some heavily customized certificates or transcripts, you want to get with your tech and just make sure that it's using all of the functions that have been ported to ACEweb to make sure that you get full compatibility with that. All right, so moving on, we're going to start talking about our instructor access. So instructors, we've kind of covered all of these with the Manager web, but on the instructor side, they have somewhat of a more limited access to the different things that you can access through Manager web, such as viewing course information for the courses that they're teaching, viewing and printing workshop and course rosters, printing attendance sheets, and there's two things I want to point out a difference between here. If you have the attendance module, then you might not be actually doing the attendance sheet. The attendance sheet is simply a kind of like a roster that the instructor would go and print out that basically has all the people and then a little checkbox for each date. So, they're checking off who's present when they come in. That attendance is different than the actual attendance tracking module, which goes to much more detail and has a broader range where you can enter the hours, the grades, the credits, reasons, things like that, in a lot more verbose detail. So two different things that we're talking about there, but instructor access does give the ability for your instructors to edit both of those. They're also going to have the ability to email students, either a single student or the option to email the entire class. And then, of course, you can also record hours, credits, and grades with that attendance module. So we're going to look at some of these screens here. So once your instructor is logged in, they're first going to see whatever upcoming courses that they're teaching. Depending on which of the checkboxes you actually check, is going to filter that list down to make it more manageable for the instructors. One thing I will mention that we're not going to talk a lot about today is the difference between just a regular instructor and a super instructor. A super instructor also has instructor access on ACEweb. However, instead of having to be on the actual course and only seeing the courses that they are teaching, super instructors can basically see everything. So they get some new options by filtering for specific classes, searching for certain keywords, things like that. But the abilities that they have are essentially the same. Your normal instructors are just going to see the classes that they're actually teaching. So if your instructor clicks, let's say, the list button under the roster column there, that's going to take them to the page that shows them, by default, the course roster. And you'll notice that the emails actually are a link. So what this means is that they can click that link and it's going to open up their email browser or their email client and allow them to send an email to that specific student. Now keep in mind, this is not an email service, so this is not being sent through ACEweb. This is just using whatever the instructor has on the computer that they're using. So if they're at home, then this is going to fire up whatever email client they use and send it from that email address. So important to know, or important to let your instructors know that detail. The other things that they've got available on this is the course details page. This is going to show some information about the course. It's going to have the description, the dates and times, basically the stuff that you would see if you went to the course description page. Instructors get to see a little bit more. They can see enrollment counts, some things like that. And then our last tab is the Tools tab. This is where they can actually email the entire class. They can print out or export like the attendance sheet or a roster, or they can, let's see if I've got an example here. Okay, no more examples on that one. So if we go back, or we go forward one more page, there's the option to edit your grades, technically grades, hours, and credits. Now this is a section that is underneath the normal course section. So when your instructor logs in and is looking at the list of their courses, at the top they're going to see the courses with the option to list or track attendance. Gradebook access is in a completely separate section below all that. So if you get a call from your instructor and they say they can't find the course to edit the grade, again, it may be in a separate section. And the main reason is because the top section is mainly for upcoming courses, whereas the gradebook section, it's going to keep a list of those courses where they can edit grades for a number of days after the course is ended, typically when you would be putting in that information. All right, and finally, if you do have that attendance module, the track button from their main course list is going to take them to the attendance tracker page for that course. So this is where you can put in all sorts of different options here. You can track the attendance hours either for the entire class. You can fill in, a certain default number of hours. You can do it for all dates. So if they wait until the complete end of the course over multiple sessions, they could do it all at once, or they could do it on a daily basis. However you want that to be used. Your instructors have this tool to do that work for you on ACEweb. So again, if you've got a staff member that is just constantly getting, these things printed out by an instructor or handwritten notes or emails that say, here's the attendance list for this day for this class, and then you've got them entering that in Student Manager manually, make sure that your instructors know, that your staff know that you can empower your instructors to be able to take off some of this workload for you. All right, so that wraps up that section on instructors. Now we're going to look at some of the extra resources that you have available to you. The first one, Webinar Archive, we briefly talked about this. From our website, if you go under Customers up in the top and you click the Webinar Archive link, it's going to take you to our Webinar Archive tool. And this tool has the ability to filter down by certain categories. So if your role at your organization is, a keeper of the flame, or you just do financial type reporting, there's a section that you can just view those particular webinars. So very handy because we do have quite a few of them now. If you want to just see the ones that are going to pertain to you the most, definitely use that option to sort those down. And the two big topics that we talked about today, both staff web access and the AW Storm module, we've got full webinars on those that show you much, much more information, as well as some information on how to get started enabling those for your ACEweb installation. Now, most of our webinars are also going to have the YouTube link to be able to view kind of like you're viewing this now, but just in a YouTube video. Or if you want to have that PowerPoint where you'd like to maybe represent this to your own staff members as a kind of a training, you can download the PowerPoint there as well. We usually have these up just within a couple of days after our webinars air. Next up is the ACEweb Sandbox. The easiest way to get to this is probably just going directly to tryaceweb.com. And that's going to take you to the page kind of that you see in the picture there with a number of different options that you can choose along that bar. If you click the examples link, you'll see the page that you're looking at now. So these are all examples, and most of these are live examples that you can really, log in and play around with. We've got sample logins, so you don't need to create an account. You can log in as kind of a test account and play around with these. But if you want to see examples of some of the things that maybe aren't enabled by default on an ACEweb installation and just kind of see it in action, this is a great way to do that. So the other way to get to this is from our main page. If you go under, let's see if I can go here, aceware.com, and we go under Products, ACEweb. Right here is a button that takes you directly to the ACEweb Sandbox. Following that is ACEweb in action. Again, this is you guys. This is your ACEweb showcase section. One thing I'll mention is the sites that have the double asterisks are ones that have the ACEweb makeover. So if you have been thinking about a makeover and you want to kind of see some examples of how other places have molded their ACEweb to look more like their main website, this is a great place to go to be able to check out some of those links. So thank you, everyone, especially if you're here and you're on that list. We appreciate you letting us put your name out there. So. All right, and finally, the ACEware online help. I am really hoping that everyone here in attendance knows about the online help and has used it in the past, because it is a wonderful tool. And it's pretty much what all of us techs do when you call in, is we're going to have the online help up to be able to check against, whatever issue you may be having. So from our main website, go under Customers and click the Online Reference Guide. If you're in Student Manager, this isn't terribly new, but you can actually click this book button, and that will open a browser and go right to the ACEware Online Help. Pretty handy. Also on our website is the ACEware forums. So again, if you want to stay up to date and be notified of every release of Student Manager and ACEweb, visit our forums, sign up for an account. Usually the account creation process is immediate. It's going to send us an email and say, hey, this person wants to create an account. We do want to enable that because this is a resource just for you guys. This is not a public forum. So once you get signed up, you'll want to subscribe to whichever forum you want to get notifications about. So if you are wanting to stay up to date with every ACEweb build that comes out, make sure you subscribe to that ACEweb updates forum. We'll send you an email every time we post a new build. And with that, I think we are about done. So it looks like we've got time for questions. Sharon, I'm going to hop to the next slide and turn this over to you.
Nicely done, Jason. We appreciate you giving us all that information, and I am sure that everybody attending today is going to be using ACEweb in new ways to them. And we would love for you to share the new features that you use. And if you have questions as you start to use something new that's new to you, let us know and we'll give you a hand. I'd like to let you know that the next 2 months of webinars, user webinars, will be led by Lindsay. You'll have some quality time with her as she talks about crafting quality queries. I think these are going to be very popular sessions, and so I encourage you to jump in and register for those. When you register for one of them, you're registered for both of them. So just a one-stop shop to get both of these on your to-do list. And
That is
I'm going
a
to bring
mouthful of a title, I just have to add.
crafting quality queries. Yes,
There
yes.
you go. You nailed it.
I did. So, and we also want to remind you, we are taking registrations for the 2020 Users Conference. This is the best place to come to really learn and see how other customers are using the software. You have sessions from customers and also from the ACEware team. Registrations are coming in quickly, and I'm excited. That shows me it's going to be a great event, and we'd love to have you with us too. So if you have questions about the scholarship you have available, drop me a line. I'll help you through that. But we look forward to seeing as many as possible in Savannah the first week of June 2020. And Jason, it looks to me like everybody is trying to keep up with everything you told them. They're going to go share everything with their team, and I expect we'll hear from them later about different things they're going to be implementing. With that, we'll say thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.